6:02, we have more than a quorum, so we'll call a meeting to order. And first on the agenda tonight, since we have no minutes to review, is public comment. If anyone has any public comment, this is the time to do so on any issue. Eric, do you see anybody waiting in line?
Nope, I don't see anyone in the chat who was just make a public comment this time, Terry.
Okay. So we'll go on then to the budget review. We're a few minutes ahead of time, which is good because we have a lot to do tonight. And the first item on the agenda are the town clerk and elections part of it. So Sarah Mason will be joining us, hopefully momentarily.
Gordon here. I noticed on the budget presentation, the second agenda item is the Cemetery Commission. And I just wanted to advise the board that I have been doing some work in the town cemeteries for setting cornerstones and doing some small excavation. Conflict of interest, I don't believe so. I think it's pretty minimal in the budget concern, but I wanted to bring it to the board's attention just so that I'm honoring our system and thoughts on if the board's comfortable with me sitting in on that or not.
Good, thank you. I don't have any problem with you sitting in on it. I don't see anybody else who does have either, so that's fine. But thank you for the heads up.
Sure.
So we'll go on then to Sarah is with us, and we can go on to the operating budget for the town clerk and for elections. Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Eric,
yes.
We okay? All right. Yep. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Again, I'm Sarah Mason, the town clerk, for anyone that might be listening and can't see in here. This is my first budget presentation, so I hope to be brief because you have a lot, but a little bit thorough so we know what's ahead. I do have some notes, so if I'm looking down, that's why. Normally, the clerk's budget is pretty straightforward and steady year to year. Of course, this year has been anything but steady, normal, or straightforward. While some things remain consistent, there are a few things that have made this budget projection a little trickier than usual. For starters, we're still dealing with untangling a little bit of the clerk and the treasurer office split. Those things continue to unfold for us. Just change my view here. There we go. It's been some small things, items that were booked before to one department are now split between two or perhaps even three or more departments going forward. You might notice those on some of the line items, like office supplies going from 4,000 down to 2. That really is just sort of splitting one office into two different departments. Yeah. So again, a minor change there. Some of the major changes that would be more evident were under the categories of town clerk salary, town clerk staff salary, and the benefits that are associated with that. Shirley could speak a little more to those items if that's necessary. The increase side would be noticing an increase on the managers and finance and treasurer's budget. So mine actually is down as opposed to up there. Minor changes as you're looking down the summary sheet, mileage and training and conferences. Deb had budgeted those a little bit higher in FY21 so that I could attend as many, clerks classes and conferences as I could, which we do pretty much anyone that comes up, we go to. The annual conference is usually a biggie, as well as there's a week-long institute in New Hampshire called NEMC, which is New England Municipal Clerks. Of course, everything this year has been canceled altogether. So those things were canceled, which means no driving. Also meant not paying for any sort of classes for the most part this year. FY22 was probably still going to be maybe a little questionable, depending on, where we're at. In the world and if people are gathering and getting together, and a lot of these things have moved to online, so that might be the way that that pans out for the future. Let's see, other minor changes to mention. Dog licensing was Not a total loss this last year. We came out about where we normally do, about 100 short of our normal projection at 545 dogs right now, which is about 100 short of our usual 650, which is not too bad considering that is exactly when the office closed, was when those things come due around March or April, and was certainly not on most people's radar to be the first thing that they were taking care of. Waiving the late fees from last year was huge and a real key to people actually doing it as the year went along. When they got around to it, when they remembered, whether it was June or, August, they did do it once, they sort of got around to following through on those. The downside of that is really all the things that we've been doing by mail, because people aren't really able to come in. We're kind of eating that in our postage budget a little bit, and I'll touch on that a little bit more later. So those were some of the minor changes that you may have noticed on some of the spreadsheets. Major changes were due to COVID having to halt the passport processing completely back in March of 2020, the year we're in now. That a big revenue loss for the office. Normally we are a very busy office. We do a lot of passports for the community and Chittenden County and beyond. And again, of course, that was just not anything that was going to be able to happen. And probably won't happen for a while. I certainly am not going to be bringing people into the office for the foreseeable future. And this is sort of bringing into light whether it is worth having an employee who is almost solely tasked with that job. If you look at the pay and the benefits that go along with that. So something that I may be revisiting in the future. Revenue uptick. The good news, land record recording fees continue to be a major income source for us. In FY20, the total for the year was $190,000. The big increase there is the per page fee in 2019 went from $10 per page to $15. So we're now really seeing the effects and the benefits now that we've been through almost a full year cycle on that. Hopefully that will continue. The real estate market in Williston is still just really strong. Refinancing market is fast and furious. Mortgages are very long at this point. 30 pages isn't uncommon. So what used to be bringing in $300 at 10 per page is now again, infinitely more. And that has been a huge benefit to all towns. So that's good news for the office. What passports is losing, we've gained in our land record recording. Let's see. On the election side of things, it's been a little tough to sort of put a number on some of the things that are normally consistent, and that would be postage that one would go through during an election season. The amount of absentee, early, or mail-in ballots, again, was pretty consistent. It was kind of a small crowd that used to utilize that feature. Going forward, we're probably going to have a lot more, and that will be something to be determined, even for this March, let alone in the coming years. If we're going to mail ballots to all people, it will certainly be an expense that's going to determine what my postage budget will be there. And even ballot printing, normally we estimate based on all of our past, if we choose to, send more out, that also means printing and paying for more of those. So again, those are a couple things that have been hard to sort of nail down, just given the times that we're in and some of the philosophical and logistical questions about how we're going to go forward in the future with elections. I don't have any major capital projects to speak to, nothing like the fire department and some of the other departments that have big items that are always coming down the pike for them. The vault is always in the back of people's minds that, we had an investment in that last year, which will hold us for a while, but that's just certainly in the back of my mind sometimes when I see it filling up. Staffing changes, looking to return what was made a full-time position back to the previous part-time status that it was at before, and also looking at a possible share with some other departments and trying to utilize, a person in a position a little bit differently between a few of the offices here in this building. So that's my overview.
Good, thank you, Sarah.
Sure.
Any questions from members of the board?
I'll try to be quick. Shirley, with the town treasurer being pulled out of what used to be the clerk and the treasurers, where do we find the town treasurers costs now?
That'll be in finance when we get to finance.
Okay, all right. I figured. I just haven't found it yet. Obviously.
keep turning the pages.
Okay.
It's in there somewhere.
Yep. Then the only other question, and I'm not disagreeing, but this is a budget for 2022, which doesn't start till the summer and then goes for a full year. I guess my question is it really realistic that we won't expect any passport revenue coming in that 1 year period? Maybe I'm being overly optimistic regarding COVID, but
yeah, no, I agree, Jeff. I don't know. Eric and I have sort of been talking a little about when is it realistic that we will open the doors. Passports certainly probably will have to change by appointment only. I mean, before, and Eric, you were here for a little bit. I mean, it can be very, very busy. It's people in lines, it's people at the door, it's families, it's children, it's seniors. So it's certainly going to have to be relooked at. And I have to recertify and stay current every year. And the State Department was nice enough in the packet that they sent to say, you're doing some right now, you're doing some as of February of 2021, or you are not sure yet. And since I can't say yes to February of 2021, I'm sort of in this holding pattern. So it's a huge question. Will I feel good about having a lot of people in here come July 1st? Maybe. Again, it was very hard to sort of fill those holes in when, Shirley, Eric and I did some talking about that. It's going to be a tricky one.
Okay.
And a lot of it does depend on the public and how many people we want, streaming through here on any given day. And again, some of that can be negated by switching to appointment only, which is what all other agents in the area do. We're the only ones that just sort of take a free for all.
Okay.
But it's possible.
Better to get more money in than less, for sure. So,
Oh, sure. Yeah. Better to be happily surprised than, yeah.
yeah, right.
True. Yeah. Yeah. We tried to err on the side of caution on some of those items. That's a little tricky to predict. A lot of our work does depend on the public and then coming in here. So it's been tricky to sort of decide if and when we'll be back to anything that looks like normal. But we've been doing really well as far as rolling with the COVID punches. Researchers are happy. The public is relatively happy. We've learned to do a lot remotely and scanning and mailing. And like I said, the only negative is that we're eating a little more in postage because every single thing somebody wants, we have to pay for. And besides that, things have been going pretty well. I'm sure it's my time. Oh, we're getting there. 6:15. Well. Okay. Yep. Anybody else? Anything?
Sarah, I just have a question based fundamentally in ignorance. I'm looking at the, and this is just out of curiosity more than anything, so I'll be super quick. But the elections, looking at the postage for that, and it looks like, am I reading it right? And I'm on, my computer says it's page 131. I don't know if that's the.
I don't know. I just have a couple printouts of Shirley's budget for me. What are you getting
I'm looking
at?
at the I'm looking at the actual cost for postage for FY 2020, and it's $1,646. Is that? Am I looking at the right thing?
You are.
Okay, and then so for fiscal year, for this coming fiscal year, it would be 1,900.
No.
What's that then?
That's for 2021, the current year we're in right now.
Okay, all right. Yep.
And then and there won't be much going on in FY22. There'll be no general until November, but that puts us into FY23. So really all we have going on will be town meeting.
Yep.
And I read today that the governor is perhaps going to put in the budget for next year, or for the adjusted budget for 2021, monies for postage for towns to send out ballots to everyone. So we'll see whether that comes true or not.
Well, I was slightly concerned by that this year, but it turned out so well that I don't have any concerns anymore.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else for Sarah? If not, thank you very much, Sarah. We appreciate your being
Thank you,
with us.
everybody. Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too. So next is the Cemetery Commission, and Jack Price is going to be on the line for that.
Yep. Jack, I'm going to get you connected right now.
And as we move to cemetery, is the only thing to look at in cemetery in the public works line item?
It's in buildings and grounds and in public works, you're right. But we do have a one pager that came in the packet that explains what the request is.
And
Okay.
I've got that on the screen.
There
now.
it is right there.
Oh, okay, great. I said I'm not going to get my packet because I've already got everything. And it turns out I was wrong.
Had a couple minor updates, but is this helpful for the board? I'm doing a screen share. It's different for me I don't see the same view you're seeing, but my intent's to pull up mainly the summaries and the capital sheets as we go here for put it on the screen.
I have it in front of me as well.
Okay, I'm just looking for.
Guess we're good.
Eric, could you scroll down on the screen just a little? Perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
And
So it's the 36,000. That's their total budget. Okay.
That's the total expense, right? But we're looking for 27.9 from the
Right,
town.
to come out of the
the town support.
Okay.
Let's see. Jack, I think you're connected. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Can you see
If you
me?
wanted to try to share your video, you could do that as well, but I can hear you good on my end here.
Okay, just hit start video.
Yep,
Okay.
Welcome, Jack.
Thank you.
there you are.
Here I am.
Good. So
Well.
the floor is yours.
All right, I'll take it. Yeah, what you see before you is the proposed budget for 2022 that Shirley and I worked out a couple weeks ago. And as an overview, I thought the 4 cemeteries listed here, just sort of a thought on what is going to be done in that year. And we, like Sarah said, we have no major capital projects planned, which I'm sure is fine with everybody. Having said that, if I could just quickly review the 4 cemeteries, I think I'll try to pick out the salient parts of these. For Deerview, at some point, Deerview will have filled up its first section. There are 4 quadrants, and a new quadrant will need to be opened up for sale of lots, but not anytime soon. By my calculation, we've got about 120 lots that haven't been sold yet there. I'd say about 2/3 of them have been. But at the rate of selling lots over in Deerview at about, let's say, 10 a year, we're still 10 years out from that, but it's not too early to start thinking about a capitalization project to do the engineering, build the roads and extend the water and fencing, et cetera, to accommodate that when the time comes. That, again, is something that's so far out that we probably don't need to talk about it anymore tonight. In Morris Cemetery, 2 years ago, we actually replaced 2 of the 4 sides of the cemetery. two of the four sides of fencing on the cemetery with very nice new wire fencing. It's very attractive from the roadside. The other two sides are, they're deteriorated, but mostly rusty, and it's more of an aesthetic thing than anything. So that can be put on the back burner. It's not urgent. It'd be nice to complete that, but in these fiscal restraint times, we put that on the shelf. Nothing going on Chittenden Cemetery. We don't need a fence there at the moment. East Cemetery is the big one. That's always got a lot of maintenance issues, including ground that has settled over the years, especially in the early sections 1 and 2 are the oldest part of East Cemetery, and those are a lot of those grave sites have either sunk in and need topsoil amendment, or they need stones raised. They've sunk down below the surface of the lawn. Old headstones that are tipped over, broken, and that's a lot of maintenance issue over there. So what you see there is, and also we've got a weed problem. Instead of having grass growing in sections 5 and 6, which are the farthest out towards the golf course, we've got this wild fescue that's growing there, which is an interesting and hard to extract weed. And the way we're going about it, instead of herbicides, we're trying to change the pH of the soil so that it's more conducive to turf growing. And that will take years to do. And I'm actually one of the guys with a spreader. Bruce Moore is, loaned me one of his men, but we spread a couple times a year. We spread, 500 pounds of lime down there to try to adjust the pH. Once we get that right, we'll know that because the fescue will start dying off. Then we're going to get the sedum. I'm sorry, did I say fescue? The sedum is the weed, and once the sedum dies off, then we can go back and overplant it with grass, fescue. So that's and we've gotten professional advice on that. Golf course management people have come over and said, here's what you've got to do. It's going to take a while to turn this around, but we're going to work away at it. All cemeteries need to be maintained by mowing and trimming, and that's what the next item there is. And by Bruce Hoare's calculation, a month of maintenance, grass cutting and trimming costs about $4,000, and there are 6 months that is actually needed. So that gives you $24,000 in the expense side of the spreadsheet, plus another $5,000 for incidental maintenance of fencing and repairs of stones and that kind of thing. So looking at the actual budget, the way it's laid out here, I'd like to talk about revenues first. And the revenues that we make are from sale of lots. And for a resident in Williston, purchasing a lot costs $500. If you're a non-resident, it's $1,000, and depending on which cemetery you're in, it's either a 4x8 plot or lot or a 4x10 lot. The larger ones are in Deerview. But at any rate, we project that we'll sell 10 lots in the coming year in Deerview. And Deerview is the only cemetery where lots are being sold as new lots. East is completely bought up. It's completely owned by lot owners. And so there are transactions that occur when people want to when they bought a family plot with several lots in it, and suddenly they'd like to cash out on those and put them on market for sale. But that's a different issue. That doesn't include us. So if we sell 10 lots, that brings in $5,000 worth of revenue. To give you an idea of the past lot sales in 2019, fiscal year 2019 to 20, we sold 5 lots in Deerview and two interment sites. I guess that's the way I'd put it, because they're not really lots, but interment sites in the Memorial Garden, and also at $500 per. This last year, we sold 8 in Deerview, 8 lots in Deerview, and 2 in the Memorial Garden. So I'm guess, it's a guess, and we're not sure how many we're selling. We're guessing that with the COVID thing, we might actually have more lot sales for a sinister reason in the coming year, and also a lot of people who have got their relatives' remains sitting on their above their fireplace. They may finally decide to inter them. So you may see a flurry of activity, which is well exceeding the lot sales that I've projected here. On the other hand, that's in a grim way good news, because it shows up as a plus on the ledger sheet. So I'll skip over cemetery reserves at the moment, although Shirley, I since we did this, worked this up a couple of weeks ago, you sent me another memo last week, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but you said the auditors were questioning the cemetery accounts and come up with some unused funds from different fiscal years that were sort of on the books, but are those credits to us? Is that it? So that we can use that money if it's appropriately designated?
Yep.
Because there's $1,400 there. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want to change this at a late date, but there are actually some cemetery reserves there we can draw on. Will actually sweeten our picture here a little bit. So I'll once later this week, I'll talk to you, Shirley, about that and to see if I understand how those monies are assigned. These are from projects in fiscal year 2003, fiscal year 05, and fiscal year 12. So, and it amounts to $1,400. Not a huge amount of money, but in our small budget, that is actually significant. The Hazeltine Fund, the Hazeltine family lived here for years and have great affection for the town and wanted to make a contribution in some sense. Typically at this time of year, they do make a gift. It's usually about $2,500. That check hasn't come yet. I don't know if it will, but that's also found money. That money is designated, by the way, for capital improvements in East Cemetery, where their family plot is. Yep. So it can't be used for maintenance. Next item is cornerstone fees. This is a little bit, it's just a paper entry, because if you look to the left under expenses, you'll see the cornerstone expenses are the same number. So you've got cornerstone fees and cornerstone expense. And what happens there is when we sell a lot to a client, there are 2 fees involved. One is for the lot itself, and one is for the pricing of the cornerstones. The cornerstones, there are 4 of them, and they delineate the lot or a set of lots known as a plot, but there are 4 of them, and they cost, at the quarry, they cost with the family, monogram on it, they cost $160 for 4 granite blocks. Seems like actually a pretty good deal because they're really nicely made. But at any rate, at the time we sell a lot, people have to buy, also come across another $160 to make it totally of $660 for buying a lot. So of that, we break that out, $160. The family gives us a check for that. We give it to the town. The town holds on to it, deposits it. And then when the quarry delivers the cornerstones, they submit a bill to the town for $160 for those 4 blocks. So it goes back out. The town pays that. And so it's a, canceled transaction there, but it needs to be included in the in and out box there. Town support, of course, is the largest contributor here. Thank you. And yet the total revenues at 36,000 are balanced with the total expenses, of course. And looking at the expense column, maintenance and repairs, we've already talked about that. That's a combination of 6 months at 4,000 for mowing, plus another 5,000 for just regular maintenance of things. The interment memorial garden, interment in the memorial garden, we pay a contractor $350 for the memorial garden to actually prepare the interment site and cover it up at the end of the interment. And another expense that's involved with the memorial garden is the lettering on the granite pillars that define that part of the communal cremations interment area. By the way, we're almost filled up. Well, maybe not quite, but we're well filled up in the first interment plot, mass interment plot, but we've got 4 or 5 others on the way. So that's not even close to being an issue. There are no cornerstones in the memorial garden. So that doesn't come into play here. So the cornerstone installment fee that you see as an expense there is actually for Deerview, because once people buy a plot in Deerview or a lot in Deerview, they must have those cornerstones placed as soon as possible, and we pay somebody $150 to set 4 stones. So that's what you see. It's a factor of the projected lot sale of 10 lots times 150. So that's 1,500. And then equipment operations and repairs. We actually have some lawn tractors that are stored over there at the shed at East Cemetery, and we're keeping them because we occasionally need them, and to just keep them, you can't just let a piece of equipment sit there and rust. So that's just sort of an insurance plan on keeping those 2 tractors up and ready. So the rest of that statement on that page sort of breaks down, what I've just told you. But yeah, I've talked too long already.
Thank you, Jack. Is there any questions for Jack regarding the Cemetery Commission and their request?
Oh, sorry, Jack, I don't have a question for you. I mean, budget's very straightforward. Good. Shirley, question for you. Obviously, the cemetery is not a town department, like Public Works or police or something. What could you briefly explain what it is?
The cemetery is, I want to say, a special revenue fund in our financial statement reporting. So they are a piece of the town in our, I'll say audited financial statements.
Okay. Is there anybody else who falls in that category?
I just was opening the financial statements, Jeff. Let's
I beat you
see.
to it.
The other things that are considered special revenue funds are like the records restoration fund. So I don't know if you noticed when Sarah was talking about her last year actual, she said like 190,000, but there's only like 168,000 showing up as revenue. So $2 per page goes into this records restoration fund. So that's considered a special revenue fund. The reappraisal fund, so those are dollars we get from the state of Vermont. Those are special revenue funds. The conservation fund falls in that category. The host town fund, our grant fund, and the cemetery fund. Part of the cemetery fund. Part of the cemetery fund. That's an interesting one because part of it goes there, Jeff, and part of the cemetery fund lies in a permanent fund because they were gifts that were given in perpetuity. So that one's sort of one fund in our GL, but split in two different places in our financials, but all part of the bigger town.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for Jack? If not, thank you very much, Jack, and we appreciate all the hard work that the commission does.
You do it.
Ditto.
Jack.
We'll move on then to planning and zoning. I presume that's Matt Belanger who is going to be presenting.
Yep, and Terry, we also have Melinda Scott this evening for the conservation capital projects.
Good, yes.
You have a preference where you would like to speak first?
Usually we do operating budget first and then capital, but whatever they would like to do is fine.
Okay, I'll get them both connected up here. Matt and Melinda, I'll have you connected momentarily.
Looks like we're all set, Eric.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Pull your budget up, Matt.
Terrific. Thank you. So a couple of things about the planning and conservation budgets for this fiscal year. The first is that when you're comparing to past years, you'll note that we've merged conservation and planning into one budget, which makes year to year individual line items a little tougher to compare, but is going to help us out in terms of reflecting really the way planning and zoning operates, which is as a unified office with a conservation planner who will no longer have to split her time on her timesheets to build two different town budgets for one person. And we've also tried to merge things like mileage and conferences and training. So those numbers may initially look a little bit bigger, but recall that they reflect a merger of the two budgets, and we have achieved some slight reductions there. So taking aside that you're seeing that merger, a couple of broad brush things about planning and conservation. We did adjust our projected permit fee revenue downward ever so slightly for FY22. We're usually very conservative about this number anyway, because it can be pretty volatile depending on whether one or more large projects come in any given fiscal year or not. But at this time, all of the current development at our big projects has already been permitted, and we don't have a lot in the development review board pipeline that would be very large stuff. So we're seeing most of that permit fee revenue coming from our normal traffic of residential and small commercial projects, as opposed to another large apartment building or commercial building or something like that. So we're being a little bit more conservative than normal, but ever more conservative on revenue there. A few highlights to services. This budget, reflects our ongoing service that we provide to the community in planning and zoning. Certainly the way in which we provide that has shifted dramatically in the last year. We staff 4 volunteer boards plus any number of ad hoc committees and groups, and had to shift all of that, much as you've had to shift to Zoom. That does create some ongoing challenge for us in that we are regularly bringing new applicants or members of the public into the Zoom world and training them, setting up individual sessions, one-on-ones with people to get them ready to attend and participate in those public meetings. And, in addition to our regular committee flow, we had a fairly large public engagement piece happen this last fiscal year related to the possibility of changing the rules for open space in the residential part of town. And we anticipate a lot more online interaction as the town dives into the form-based code project for Taft Corners. Currently we're scheduling our big public input phase of that project toward the end of March. So it'll happen in FY21. There will be continued activity on the code project in FY22. And so, we've kept funding for planning studies and professional services at a fairly high level. But what I could assure you is that the town's commitment in the form-based code project between FY21 and 22 is just a little bit over $48,500. And that's what we're going to spend. It's just we're not entirely sure how much of that will be billed for prior to the close of FY21 and how much we would need to spend going forward. That line item for planning studies also might cover a small grant match if we get a municipal planning grant related to illustrating the new code that is under development for the historic village. So those are sort of our larger items in the budget. As I mentioned, we've merged a number of things with conservation, with overall numbers a little bit reduced. We're not racking up a lot of mileage. We would anticipate eventually getting back to some level of needing to do some mileage reimbursement if in-person conferences and training become available again. And we've reduced, but sort of tried to mostly maintain our line items for conference and training. Anticipate eventually having another AICP certified planner in the office and wanting to be able to cover that, as well as keep various staff members connected with current affairs as it pertains to planning in Vermont. I'll also mention the conservation and trails intern position. You see used to be in FY21 a $3,000 line item. We now have a merged line item for student interns at $6,000 proposed for FY22. It's very likely that what we're really looking at, and you may want to ask Melinda for some clarification when she comes on, is that we're using that to support a seasonal employee in the summer. Because the tasks that we really see the need for are related to property management in the country parks and conservation areas. As you might be aware, during COVID, we've had really unprecedented levels of use of those areas, and that requires some additional maintenance and management. And it's really getting to the point where that's not something we want to ramp up with an intern every summer, but rather just be able to hire someone and say, this is the job for the summer. These are the tasks that need to be completed to keep these areas in line. And it's really just become more of a work item than an educational experience for someone as our responsibilities have increased out there. So with those things, Melinda is going to talk about the capital budget. The other thing that Eric asked us to speak to the board about is where we see things going in the next 3 to 5 years. So sort of that midterm horizon. I would say that we're getting to the point where there's a need for some additional enforcement coverage on matters that at least touch on zoning. Many of those matters that we experience also have implications either for the health officer or things that are happening in the fire department's world related to the way that our commercial or multifamily residential sites are being operated. So issues of, snow being put in the wrong place and blocking a fire hydrant, or dealing with parking matters, or some of the landlord-tenant type things that we end up encountering. And so I think, this is a good time to just sort of mention that in Williston's relatively near-term future, the town would do well to consider enhancing its capacity to address those kinds of things. Currently, from the zoning perspective, those fall to me. They are very time consuming. They both take a lot of hours to work on, and they also tend to be the kind of issues that don't resolve quickly. And you may be aware we've had the health order related to one property in town. We've spanned a couple years at this point trying to find resolution of that situation. So that's really what I would identify as the more long-term task. If we were able to build some capacity there, potentially share some capacity with other departments that are looking at taking on a more on-the-ground regulatory role, we could make sure that we retain the planner capacity that we're going to need and continue to need and build on, especially if we start analyzing projects against a more complicated design code, which we certainly hope to develop in a way that's user friendly. But we're going to be looking at some architectural standards that are going to take some time and attention when we start administering those. So I will stop there.
Before we switch to capital, any questions regarding the operating budget for Matt?
Quickly, Matt, you mentioned that the revenue expected from permits, you were going to decrease it slightly, but the revenue we have shows it staying level, whatever. It's not funded, but level estimated at 125. I just want to make sure that either what I have is correct or. Sorry, Eric, for making you chase this down.
I saw that too, Jeff, and I wrote a note to follow up on that because I have the same numbers you do.
Okay. It's not a big deal. I just want to make sure that. And I realized when you
go to the very beginning, Eric, maybe like page 10 or something. I think that's where your revenue might be.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome.
And if you expect the same revenue coming in last year as this year, in a sense, that is a decrease because of the cost of living, aspect. But,
yeah. Matt, was that a typo on my part here?
Eric, it may be something that didn't come through in the draft, but that maybe we communicated over email at some point. And I think all I had done was downward adjusted it by about $5,000.
Okay.
That may have been back maybe just after we'd gotten through Q1, and we're trying to get a grip on that. So that's what I'd recommend there. But it's, as I said, it's really a guess, and unfortunately that stuff can be quite variable just depending on what's in the pipeline.
Okay, Amanda.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the other question, Matt, I had was the compliance officer aspect. Do other towns do that, have that capacity, that function?
Different places address it in different ways. Winooski has a somewhat co-located code enforcement position that handles some sort of a little bit of parking and a little bit of fire marshal and a little bit of P&Z. Other communities have taken on, as you might be aware, like South Burlington, taking on more of the fire marshal role. In Williston, we've talked about this, rental inspection program. That's sort of yet another thing, and it is a little different. There was a recent article in VT Digger about the state of rental housing in Vermont more broadly. And one of the things that article called out was that health officer in most Vermont communities is a volunteer position. That, with that just comes a limitation on capacity. I think, we've had an incredibly generous with her time and active health officer for the last couple of years, which has been great. But it's a really big ask of a volunteer to handle some of those things. And so it can happen a number of different ways. You can vest some ZA power, zoning administrator power, or deputy zoning administrator power in somebody other than myself as the main zoning administrator. They can be chartered to work with me. And there's a lot of I would say there's a lot of wisdom in, once you're putting somebody out into the field, that you've got them kind of working in all of the different field enforcement worlds that you would want them, that they might experience, even though some of the rules might come out of zoning and some might come out of some other town ordinance.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think a number of years ago, we actually had a zoning administrator position in town, as well as a director of planning position. So we, at that time when we had a resignation, I think we just combined the two into the planning director's position. So it may be time to look at that again.
Good. Oh, good memory.
Yeah. The gray matter is getting thinner, but
yeah, even Burlington, I was asking one of the planners in Burlington how they handle it, and everything goes out under the director of planning's signature, apparently, and so he's vested with the ZA power, but really it's mostly a former Williston ZA, Scott Guston, doing the legwork on the DRB staffing, as well as a lot of the zoning. And then he's got folks, deputized under him as well. So it can be shared.
Yeah.
anything else on operating budget? If not, we'll go to Melinda then with the capital budget. I believe 3 different projects.
Hi.
Hi there.
Yeah, so the first project is the Allen Brook Nature Trail Boardwalk. That has been on the capital budget it was on last year. And the town hired Engineering Ventures to complete some engineered plans for the proposed boardwalk replacement. It's 195-foot long boardwalk that crosses the Allen Brook at the entrance of the nature trail by the community park. And it was last renovated I believe in 2010, and it's in kind of bad shape right now, and it really needs a complete overhaul. What we're proposing to do is to rebuild it with more durable decking material to make it last longer, so that we don't have to, hopefully don't have to keep revisiting it every 10 years. So we're proposing to use black locust lumber for the replacement. This past year, we had a trail building company, Timber and Stone, sort of do some detailed scoping of the boardwalk construction. We had originally budgeted $50,000, which was in the capital budget last year, but have had to increase that to $65,000 for the replacement. So I think what's proposed is an additional $15,000 in FY22, and then another $15,000 to fund some trail improvements right after you come off of the boardwalk and go onto the nature trail. The trail is in pretty bad shape. It's pretty badly eroded, and in the spring it gets really muddy. and it's just causing a lot of trail widening and erosion there. So we're proposing a solution there, which would be to build either a stone staircase or, just some kind of stepping stones of some sort, which we think will cost an additional $15,000. That does not have to be done in concert with the boardwalk, but could be done the following year. But we are recommending that it be done just to stabilize the trail there. On to the, does anybody have any questions about that project?
Yeah, before we go on, is there any questions regarding that?
Sorry, I do. Melinda, and this happens to me a lot. I'm a little bit lost on this one. And the reason why I'm lost is because I see that the total is 30,000, but when I read the description, I read amounts of anywhere between 50,000 and 80,000. And I'm just trying to understand why is it, 30,000 is being budgeted or actually maybe even just 15, maybe just 15 for next fiscal year, but we believe the expense is greater. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It's because there's there's $50,000 left from that was already in the capital budget and is going to carry over. It doesn't show up in here. Is that correct, Shirley?
It's if you look at the current capital savings, you see 47,048. Eric's pointing at it. That's right. What's carryover.
Okay. Okay, so that we can into in addition to another up to 30,000 over 2 fiscal years.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't pick up on that.
Sure.
Could I expand on your question, Jeff, since, we want to make sure we have all the issues. So, Melinda, we had talked about, the bridge really does need repair. And if I take 47,000 plus the 15, that's really not going to be quite enough if you separate those two projects just to finish the bridge. Or that comes to like 62,000.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that bridge needs work next year. So my question is just a list for things for us to consider. Do we need to, put a couple more thousand in FY22?
Yeah, that would be a consideration, something to think about. Otherwise, I think I would probably have to borrow some money out of the operating budget to cover the remaining.
Okay. But as I was playing, as you were talking, I was playing with the numbers. I'm like, that doesn't quite work. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else on that one? We can move on then to the next.
Okay, so this is a proposed capital improvement budget for the Catamount Community Forest to fund proposed improvements there. And these are all in the management plan. But the first thing we would like to do is to put up a trailhead kiosk with information for trail users about the Catamount Community Forest. And that is the $2,000 that you see in 2022. So we would like to do that next spring. And then in 2023, there's $5,000 in planning and engineering, and that would go towards the planning and engineering of a new access trail from the parking lot to the parcel on the south side of Governor Chittenden Road. That is currently accessed via the McCullough's driveway. And while the McCulloughs have been very generous about allowing people to walk up their driveway to access that parcel, we need a more permanent solution. So the access trail would be built along an easement that was granted to the town with the community forest. And then in 2024, there would be the actual construction of, let's see, so that would be the construction of the access trail and the repair of 7 stream crossing structures it's in the license agreement that the town is responsible for upgrading 7 trail bridges on the trail system. There's also money in here for future parking lot maintenance, $12,000. That figure was arrived at through conversations with Bruce. At the time, the town was considering acquisition of the parcel. And I think that's a pretty low priority item. I don't see any urgent need to improve that parking lot, but it's there. And then finally, there's a note, number 5, about sheep barn maintenance. So on the town-owned parcel is a historic barn that's part of the Giles Chittenden homestead. And I'm currently investigating the degree to which the town would be responsible for maintaining that structure, and figuring out future costs of that type of maintenance. So there's no money in the capital budget at this time for that, but that will be determined hopefully over the coming year. So that's all I have for this project. Any questions?
Any questions go ahead.
Just real quick, Melinda, you mentioned that the kiosk would happen, I think you mentioned this spring. And I assume by that you mean like late spring, like after July 1st, because it's in, yeah. Because
it's in at 20. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So I always get confused. 2022 starts on July 1st. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And the barn, I realize we're kicking this, down the road, appropriately so, and to figure out who's responsible for it and that type of thing. I don't know. I guess I just have to ask the question: Is it a barn worth saving? The answer may be absolutely yes. It may be absolutely no. But we seem to get these historic barns. Brennan would be another one. I don't have the right words to describe it, but they are an issue.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Okay. Enough said. Thank you.
Anything else on this one? You want to go next?
So finally, this is the establishment of kind of a long-term trail maintenance fund, similar to what the town does with the parks, with the community parks. As you know, we had a townwide trail assessment done last summer, and it provided us a lot of information about what our short, medium, and long-term maintenance needs are for the trail system. So this fund would address continuing to get those improvements done over time, and yeah, so there are several things that are listed on there as potential projects for the coming years, and it would be funded at $5,000 in FY22, and then would go up to $20,000 every year thereafter. And that's it.
Questions on that?
And it's not that I'm looking to add costs to any fiscal year budget, but I can't help but notice how in fiscal year 2022, the 5,000, then it jumps to 20,000. Is that because we don't have projects that are ready to go? Not projects, but maintenance that's ready to go.
We definitely do. I think it has to do with, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it has to do with just trying to conserve funding in this, in this time when we don't have much money.
Okay. All right. So it's purely looking at
number. That's where that number came from, Jeff. I worked with Melinda to come up with this concept, and I thought started with the proposal of 5,000. There's certainly room for the board to discuss this allocation as well as we go.
And I'm not disagreeing. I just am noticing what could be viewed as a discrepancy, if you will. I don't know if that's the best word to use.
There's also the 14,000 in the current capital savings. So we can use that for projects too.
Yeah, good. Thank you again for that reminder.
Any further questions?
No.
If not, I think that concludes our planning and zoning presentation. Anything else, Matt?
All set here. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, both of you, and we'll continue on with our discussions and going on to recreation and parks with
Thanks.
Todd Goodwin.
Todd, I'll get you connected here in the Viva room. Let's see. Todd, once you're connected, you'll just have to unmute and share your video camera.
Yeah, I'm good.
There you are.
Hi there, Todd. Welcome.
There was a light on behind me that was a glow, so I went and shut that off.
Looks like you're at a park right now, Todd.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you definitely have the Halloween look going.
Right.
So we're ready for operating budget to begin with, and then we'll go to capital after we get through with that.
Sure. Starting with the operating revenue, the day camp, that number has been just decreased, and that's due to going to one camp, one location, and then also having schools that are part two is doing a camp in the summertime at Allenbrook. So just looking.
Ooh.
Yep, he froze.
I think we lost you, Todd.
Yep. Hopefully it'll come back in a second here.
Okay.
This was supposed to be our first current situation that we're in. We think that will happen. So revenue a little bit and your average, and that's that. Under expenditures, admin salaries decreased, and that is because we're holding off hiring a program coordinator position until January of 21.
Okay.
The day camp salaries increased to bring on a second assistant director and have two of them, so that we're covering the hours of 7:30 to 5:30, which is a 10-hour day, but covering everybody only 8 hours, and being able to do that. And the money that we got from that increase came from the day camp expenses that you see that was decreased. So we just kind of moved money from one day camp area to another day camp area. And I'll jump to that now. The day camp expenses decrease as well, again, because we've gone to that one camp, one location, and will not be spending as much. The benefits line item decreased a little bit because of the program coordinator. building maintenance was added, which is janitorial to the rec office, which hadn't been there in the past. And you can see we started that this year actually with a 2,055 that's in there right now. And then community partnerships have been moved out, and that consisted of the town band, the Lake Iroquois, and
The Masonic Temple.
Masonic Temple. Thank you. And so those three have been moved, and Eric and Shirley can better explain where they moved to, but they didn't really fit into the recreation piece because there were programs that we weren't actually running or overseeing type of thing. And then under the parks, the maintenance salaries and benefits decreased, and that was the full-time buildings and ground person that was just working out what that was going to look like. That person, there is still a full-time buildings and grounds person, spend 7 months in parks. All of that was in our budget at one time, so it's been just working that to be what the real numbers are, and it's decreased a little bit. Utilities is a 3-year average plus a little bit, and we never know what weather and usage is going to be. And professional services has been removed, which was a outdoor recreation needs assessment that was going to be done. But after meeting with Eric and Shirley, we moved that to be an Allenbrook capital project, which I'll talk about later. So that's the variances in the operating budget.
Anyone have questions regarding the operating budget? I think the things that Todd said had been removed went to the services part of the budget.
Okay. No, I do not have any questions.
Any person have any questions that I can't see on the screen?
Oh,
Hearing none, let's go to capital. I think you have 4 different proposals for capital.
Yep. There is the parks pickup truck, and that's on there, but we're not looking to purchase or a new truck at this time. That just continues to increase each year and give. But we are looking at a new mower. We're not. You're on the. I can stay there, Eric. I'll jump to that Allenbrook one.
Okay,
So,
we can do the equipment fund after.
okay. Allenbrook Community Park has been on the docket for a while, and actually, putting money into that. This year, there's $20,000 that we're looking to use, and that is to do a revitalization plan for Allenbrook. So instead of doing the outdoor needs recreation assessment, which is going to lead us to doing the Allenbrook Community Park, we're jumping right to the Allenbrook Community Park and saying the current plan on the books is older than 10 years old. It's time to say what should be in that park today. And so the park revitalization plan would be looking at the needs, the wants of the community, what's appropriate to go into that park. And then in turn, this plan gives us something to put we've been putting $100,000 a year into this, and there's a current capital savings of $265. And it was a little bit more than that a couple of years ago when we relocated the path to the old plant. But it's time to say now, here's a new plan. Here's what should be in the park, and here's how to spend that money and go for bonds or grants or other things to start building out that park. Finney Crossing in that whole area is growing up, and more housing is coming, Cottonwood and everything else. So it's really time for that park to start growing with the community in that area. The And so the revitalization plan is the $20,000 that we're looking to spend on doing that.
Questions on that?
Todd, the only question I have, Jeff, here is, I don't know exactly how to ask it, but it's along the lines of, do you envision there to be significant changes to what's been, sort of evolving over the years for that park?
Yes, in the sense that the park has a lot of ball fields, and it's not really let's call a park and ball fields, and it has lots of ball fields in its in the plan now, and those ball fields can still exist, but in a different configuration. And there needs to be more of a park where people can go of all ages and enjoy just being in a park, walking in a park, the amenities of parks being basketball courts, tennis courts, pickleball courts, those types of things. And there's probably better ways of laying things out to be done efficiently, both, stormwater wise, water wise, electricity wise, solar up there, all those different things. So it's looking at the today needs going forward rather than 10, 12 years ago needs and moving forward.
It's just kind of an interesting concept or comment about how those needs or our vision of what our needs are, is changing. And, of course, that's a good thing that, I don't know what else to put in there. So you think $20,000 will be enough to complete that revitalization plan?
Yeah. I contacted a couple companies that do this type of work, and they said it was better to have an amount than keep it open-ended and have them. So we're basically saying to the companies, what can you offer us in the way of what we're looking for $20,000? And we have a list of what we're looking for, and the different companies will meet that. And the companies did say that I was in the ballpark of the $20,000.
Okay, good. And then I noticed Hans just put a comment in the chat box. And it just causes me to think is public input will be a part of this, and also the concept of maybe even thinking a little bit outside the box of what is sort of a, kind of the standard items you would put in a park versus maybe some, I don't know what the right word is, but some new ideas.
Yes. One of the things that we had in the RFP, the draft RFP, is public input. And I didn't elaborate on all the things that could go into the park because it's not for me to say, it's for the community to say. And that's what that needs assessment and revitalization plan is going to be.
Okay, great answer. Thank you.
Just to help me visualize, this would be a development of the area north of what's there now.
Yeah, so there's the two multi-purpose fields.
Yep.
And if you go to, and then there's a path that runs alongside of those. If you go to the east of those, there's land there. And then if you go to the north of those, there is somewhat of land there. And then it turns into some wetland and conservation as well.
Okay. All right. Well, that's not where we're going to put our kickball stadium. Thanks.
Any further questions on this one?
No, I would just add the impact fees would be used for this study, and that's an allowed use of impact fees.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah. By the way, I'm going to push for a bicycle velodrome. That's a joke. Don't worry.
Moving on to the next.
Parks improvements. And the next one after this is parks replacement. This is the one where a couple years ago put this together, and we're each year putting the same amount, 10,000. This one, I think the other one was 20,000. Put it in each amount so that we have a growing fund of parks improvements. This year, we were slated to do some parks improvements, like a parks improvements, like a new picnic shelter at Brennan Park. But with the COVID situation, we felt that we didn't want to encourage people to come out picnicking. So using that money was not a wise thing. But we used it on other things that were more in line. But going forward, we're looking at a shelter storage building at Allenbrook, similar to what's at Williston Williston Community Park. And the reason for that is this past summer, we had a lot more use of Allenbrook from outside organizations that we don't usually have come to us, because other area rec departments or towns had their fields closed. But with the schools closed, they didn't have places to go. So we find that and feel that if we're going to continue to use those multi-purpose fields and rent them out, we need to have some type of a shelter space for teams to go to in case of bad weather. And it also gives us the storage like we have at the Warming Hut at the community park. We're also looking at the possibility of pickleball courts, and that's set at 25,000. And Rosenau, one of two things that we're looking at right now with that, 25,000 would help us to resurface and replace one of the tennis courts with 4 pickleball courts, so that the existing court that's there now would be 4 pickleball courts and a tennis court. But also, if we can get some grant money we could actually do 3 pickleball courts next to the tennis courts, have 2 tennis courts and 3 pickleball courts. And again, both of those activities were very high usage this past summer when people were allowed to get out and recreate.
Questions regarding this proposal? Seeing none, let's move on to the next.
The next one is the parks replacement, the same thing, same concept as the improvements, but we're looking to this one is to replace things that we currently have. And in doing that, we're looking at the disc golf course, which was an 8th grade challenge project a number of years ago, that it's time for it to have some maintenance of ours, which we put like 10,000 into that. And that is for tees and signs. The current signs there now that say, hole number 2, 150 yards, are peeling paint and some are missing and so on and so forth. Plus the tees are such that they are very muddy and whatever else, and people are moving tees around. So we want to get more of a permanent tee and permanent sign, so that the users of the disc golf course are not, like a trail going off of it and making a new tee area that's destroying the field and the tees that are already there. It's also some park signs in the community park, Rosenau Park and Brennan Park, just to have a more uniformed signage of those parks. And then the other thing that we're currently looking at is some fencing around the parking lot at Community Park that's similar to what we did at Brennan Park to keep vehicles off from the fields and such. And that's all for the replacement.
That's all.
Any
It's
questions?
The amounts have not changed. And, from what's been put in there, 10 and 20,000 each year. And these are some of the suggested things. And like this year, we had suggested things, but we went off. What's nice was we had the money to do things that needed to be done with the current, situation. And we were able to kind of back off of that. We haven't gone back to the picnic pavilion at Brennan because we don't know what this summer is going to bring. The pandemic, we're not out of it yet. So we're looking at doing things. And again, like the tees and the signage, more people were using that this summer than they have in the past. So it's very important that we spend the money where the people are having the need and using the amenities in the parks.
Any further questions on this particular one?
Just one question, comment. I like the way the replacement fund, for lack of better words, is so detailed, and you've really kind of mapped it out. I just want to recognize that. I assume it's inappropriate to use impact fees for replacements. Okay, good. All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Just review items. Yep.
Thank you for your comment, Jeff. And just know that the replacement is a work in progress because as new things are added or repaired, they get updated and stuff like that. The improvements one is just kind of a one and done. We're finished it, but then it may move to the replacement situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I should do the same list for projects around the house.
And then the last thing that Eric's pulled up here is the Parks tractor and mower, and we're looking to replace a zero-turn mower next summer.
And Shirley, sorry, where do we find this?
Number 65.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
If you're
page
looking,
65?
yeah.
Under, yeah.
Yes, got it. Okay, thank you.
Proposals, yeah.
And there's 2 zero-turn mowers and a tractor that the Parks Division uses, and they're all on there. And we're up to replace a zero-turn mower. And when we replace that zero-turn mower, it's the 72-inch, so it's a larger deck. We're going to commit it to just field maintenance so that we don't have the crossover of and contamination of other things. We found that there's a lot of crabgrass that we're going to have to deal with this spring within our fertilization plan and such, and that's happened over the last couple of years.
Okay. Yeah. God, do I wish I had a 72-inch zero-turn mower for my lawn.
The next one is the pickup truck.
The pickup truck is not up for it until 2027. And we're just continuing we did update the amount, and we're continuing just to ask for $2,500 to replace that in 2027.
Good. Any questions on that? I think that concludes then the Recreation and Parks presentation and the 2 budgets. Any further questions before we move on? Hearing none, and thank you very much, Todd. We appreciate the information. We'll move on to Buildings and Grounds first, and then to Highway with Bruce Hoare.
Bruce, I'm getting you connected right now.
Hi.
Hi there.
Bruce.
So we're doing operation budget on Buildings and Grounds first of all. And we probably do the capital budget for both buildings and grounds and highway after we do the operating budgets.
Okay, works for me. Buildings and grounds, excuse me, there's not a lot of changes in buildings and grounds. You're not going to see a lot of changes through our whole budget. Buildings and grounds, probably the biggest thing is actually a deduction where we took money out of the old schoolhouse expenses just for the next year as one of the ways to help save some money going into fiscal year 22, since we're not sure how things are going to be sugaring out for all of us due to this pandemic, which hopefully is over by fiscal year 2022, but we still have to be dealing with the consequences of it. So there's really not a whole lot of changes in buildings and grounds in the operating side.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, just going through where I marked things up, and no questions.
Okay. So
Anyone else have any questions before we move on? Okay, go ahead.
highway general, moving right down the list. The places where there are any significant changes on there are, I guess I should say ones that I have any real control over are, you'll see $33,000 in streetlights. That number is most likely going to go up since we are going to be coming to the select board to accept about 2.09 miles of road in January or February. That would be the Finney Crossing and the Hamlet projects. And then you'll see the stormwater fees for roads has gone up, and not a large amount, but that is for the additional roads that we're taking over as well, and we'll have to pay our share, which is what we do out of that budget. So that's mostly in the just in the highway general, and then in the road maintenance side. Once again, we really worked hard on keeping this budget as level as we could. Some of it was just shifting some money around. So the big numbers on here that are the big changes is the equipment rental at 78,330, but that's money that we get 30 some odd thousand of that back anyway from private roads that we more like a property manager for than anything else. The rest of that is based on the amount of storms. That's how we come up with that number on the average all those years. So that's a pretty good increase in that line item. Retreatment, one of my favorites that I always come in and ask $10,000 for every year. Eric twisted my arm and we made it $5,000 for this year. Once again, trying to keep in mind the year we're getting ready to go into. Certainly we could still use that 10,000, and I'll come back for it next year. So hopefully maybe, by that time things will be straightened out better for everybody, and we can come back and ask for that for 15 in that 1 year to make up for that. Anyway, we're only asking for a $5,000 bump in that year, in that one. And then the landscaping, $2,000 difference, not a huge difference, but that's really not even to do so much with the AB, although that's going to play into things. That has to do with the fact that we're just taking down more and more hazard trees. Excuse me. Taking down more and more hazard trees, so I've asked for a little bit more money there. As I told you, I think already we did get a grant for tree replacement in this round, so we're getting some help there. So that's the highway public works budget. in a nutshell, with the major changes pointed out. If there's any questions.
Questions for Bruce?
Bruce, two quick things, I hope. In your transmittal letter, you talk about gravel roads. And I know that gravel roads and decisions to pave them can be pretty controversial. So it sounds like we might be getting close to where there might be a recommendation to pave some of our gravel roads. And full disclosure, I live on a gravel road.
Yeah, but I don't think that's one of them, Jeff.
Okay.
Nice try.
Well, no. It wasn't meant that way.
I know.
Yeah. And what's so funny about that is my wife and I have totally different opinions about what we should do.
Well, I think you'd find that that's the case with a lot of people on gravel roads. The gravel road that is probably the closest to thinking about maybe needing to be paved is one we would probably want to work in conjunction with South Burlington on, and that's
Okay.
River Cove.
Okay.
It's just becoming busier all the time as a cut through. The minute we pave it, we're probably looking at a traffic light up at 2A in River
Okay.
Cove, because it's just going to make it that much more for people. But paving a gravel road, certainly I would not recommend that we do it the old-fashioned way where we just go put asphalt over top of the gravel that's there. If we're going to go that route, we're talking lots of money, because you really should be digging that road down probably 3 or 4 feet, rebuilding the sub base, and then putting, do it the right way, rather than the way we used to do it, which was gravel roads, put some pavement on top of it, and now you got a paved road. So,
Absolutely agree. Yeah. Okay. And then the next one would be the next bullet down. We talk about use of more liquid, salt, brine for winter snow removal. And I guess my question.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My question about that is I assume there comes with that some equipment needs, and in addition to purchasing the brine solution itself. So if you could quickly comment on that.
You're stealing some of my thunder from my 3 to 5 year projection, Jeff.
Did not. Well, you put it in the letter of transmittal.
No, it's okay. We did and do have the ability to do a little bit of liquid application now with a tank we made up for in our 1 ton.
Okay.
But it certainly is something that we're going to have to be looking at more in depth. Brine is a generic term. We don't use brine ourselves right now. We use a product called Ice Begon or Ice Band. It's the beer waste or molasses waste or whatever product, along with magnesium chloride, which we actually like a little bit more expensive. I do think brine, there's still some arguments out there about that. Brine is cheap to make. It doesn't necessarily reduce the usage of your salt, which the other product does help us get a little bit lower temperatures out of the salt for the working temperature of the salt. Brine, at least our experience with our fire hydrants, when the state was really going through their brine test there a few years ago, we replaced all our bonnet bolts on our hydrants along Williston Road.
Interesting.
So,
yeah.
But the jury's still out whether it's really, coincidental. I don't know. It just, we certainly did it. So anyway, we are going to have to start looking at liquid, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in winter operations in my 3 to 5 year that I was going to talk about.
Okay.
At the end of this.
Yeah. My car mechanic tells me that the brine solution is playing havoc with my cars.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Bruce before we go on to, I think we probably want to go on to your projection for the next number of years and then go to the capital budget.
Okay. Well, you know, one of the things that I liked about when I came to Williston was the good 5-year capital plan that you guys already had in place and will continue to keep using. So that helps us some with that already. Since we were talking about the liquid and winter operations, salt has become a real problem. Not in getting it. It doesn't seem to be a problem. Let's knock on wood. But salt's becoming a real issue environmentally. We already have one section of stream that we have high chlorides in that we've got to come up with a plan on how we're going to help mitigate that. But salt is becoming very detrimental to our waterways. So we've got to look at reducing that usage. And we have been trying to do that in Williston with the use of electronics and, dealing with road temperature, only applying what needs to be applied. So we're trying to do all the right things that way. But salt is something that in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have to really be looking at different methods. And I would go so far as to say, we've got to get people used to driving on roads with snow on them again. Because that, everybody wants clear roads. We don't have a bare roads policy, but we basically do that for the most part. Even though our winter operations plan says, not to even be plowed until there's 2 or 3 inches of snow. We don't get away with that very much anymore. So we've got to start looking at, how we start maybe transitioning back that way a little bit. As far as trucks are concerned, that's in the, it's always been about every 10 years we end up with another truck, another person.
Yeah.
We're taking about 0.60 miles of road a year on average. Average plow route's 8 miles. So that's that's another person when we get to that point. We don't want to wait till we get to the 8 miles and then, then go get a truck. We should be getting that truck in person around 5 or so. So we still have a few years before we have to think about doing it again. As far as sidewalks, a good one. We all know we get lots of pressure every year about plowing sidewalks. If we ever decide to do that, then that year that we decide to do that, we're looking at another employee and, an expense of $130,000 to $140,000 for another piece of equipment. So you're looking at a $200 a quarter expense in that 1 year between the employee and the machine just to get that up and running. Something that, I think you're going to continue to get more and more pressure on, and we're maxed out sidewalk plowing now. We're not going to be able to take on very much more, if any, without just maybe a little connector section here or there. But so that's someplace I could see that it might be more than 5 years, but I could actually see all public works being moved over to Avenue A. Out of the town hall annex. We could fit in that building with some adaptions. Move the lunchroom to another spot, turn that into some offices. But I could see that happening and put all public works in one location, which would free up town hall annex for expansion because of either planning and zoning or recreation. I mean, Todd can't work by himself forever. We could certainly use in public works, and we had the position. It just was Lisa's position, which was an engineering technician, and then she got promoted to the assistant public works director, and we never refilled the engineering technician, but we could certainly use that position probably in not too many years. Stormwater, Christine's doing a heck of a job. James did a heck of a job. We've been lucky, but I can see that probably taking on another person in 5 years anyway. It's getting bigger all the time, more and more rules and regulations to try to meet. Kim, administrative assistant, one-woman show, does a heck of a job for us, but she also works for recreation. So there may be, a need for a person in that position within the next 3 to 5 years, probably more like 5 years. Town's getting bigger all the time. When we take on roads, that means we're taking on water and sewer. We have 4 people that do water and sewer for us. We're pretty lucky. That's pretty lean. They do a good job, but we keep taking on more pump stations, more miles of water and sewer line. One of the ways we could save money there is maybe to look at doing a bond for meters, make all of our meters radio read, so we don't have to send the guys out reading meters. They could all be coming right into the computer, which would free up some time there. And, I could probably account for a half a person a year, time-wise, that would free them up to do something else. I think that's pretty much it for just a quick snapshot. I mean, we Public Works has the same problem everybody across the country has, in that we don't have enough money, and it's not a complaint. We just don't have enough money to keep up with the infrastructure that we have, let alone the new infrastructure that we're going to be taking. So that is a very real issue. We're quite lucky in Williston that things are still fairly new. When you think, 50, 60 years old is fairly new. I mean, I might argue that with you on some days. We're pretty lucky that way, but we are starting to see things like metal culverts. Years ago, plastic wasn't used. It was all galvanized and metal culverts. And they're failing at a pretty good rate. We're replacing a lot of them. And when we're replacing, we're trying to, replace them with plastic or something other than metal. I hate to put metal back in the ground, but there are still times where you don't have a choice. So that's another area where, the water lines, we can keep going along. They're staying in good shape. The sewer lines are in good shape, even though they're starting to get to the end of their life cycle. They're in the ground a lot longer than that normally. But these metal culverts that are failing, we don't have any choice. We've got to go after and fix them where we have hazards on the roads. So I hope that wasn't too long, but that's.
Thank you, Bruce. That was things to look forward to, for sure. I'm not sure we can ask any good questions right now. This is all just a projection. So anybody has a burning question? Then let's move on to the capital budget, and you have about 12 or 13 things on the list.
Okay.
Or the buildings.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, I'll pull them up on the screen here.
We have one up.
Yep, I'm going by the first page in the book here.
Right.
Number 28.
Brick Church.
Number 28 in the book.
Yeah, I don't have page numbers, but
right.
This is the first one I had. But there's nothing in this one for fiscal year 22, but it's still on there so it doesn't go away. So there's not a lot to talk about right now on that one. Actually, in buildings, all the capital improvement programs are all in out years. Just like always, we keep them in there so they don't disappear, but there's nothing approved by the manager in the building section and capitals for the next fiscal year 22. So unless there's a specific question, there's not really a whole lot to talk about. We don't usually spend a lot of time on ones that aren't in the next year, but whatever your pleasure.
I'm good.
Then the next one I have is equipment. Well, we can go there. That's fine, Aaron. We can go there. Muddy Brook culvert. So we can do roads, sidewalks, and culverts. Muddy Brook culvert, we all know about. It's actually going to be Muddy Brook Bridge is moving along quite nicely. We've got a lot of the permits out of the way. Let's see, we're starting to deal with right of way. There's only one, I think it's only one person, and it happens to be on our side that we have to deal with a little temporary right of way on for an easement. So we already had the bond vote for that. So that's the $900,000 you see there. The next one is minor transportation, unless there's a question on this one.
No.
The next one's minor transportation improvements, which is money where we've used to do all those type of items that are listed on this sheet. The last things were the temporary speed humps, which we've actually left in for the winter. It's talking to the manufacturer, it's about a 50-50 on people taking them out or leaving them in. I kind of decided that the only way we're going to find out is leave them in. And if they become an issue, we can certainly go out there and get them out of the way. But we plowed a little bit already, and so far so good. Keep an eye on them. So they're there for the winter. But anyway, that's what this capital fund is for, those kind of.
Did we get any feedback from residents when we put those in?
Honestly, don't remember that we did get a lot, Terry. We did do some speed. The police did some of their speed carts out there.
Yep.
And quite honestly, we didn't see a lot of difference. But that's because there wasn't a lot of speeding going on to start with, quite honestly. But anyway, they're there, and I think the residents do like them, generally. We didn't get any bad feedback either, so that's a good thing.
That's good.
The next one is sidewalk impact, and that's from that bond that was back before like 2005 or whatever.
Okay.
And that's just money out of impact fees to keep paying that money back.
And I might jump in here for a second. So these impact fees can be used for this bond payment. They're also from the recreation impact fees. So we looked at our impact fee balance, and that an allowed use is paying off this paying this bond payment. So we were able to increase that a little bit this year to help smooth some future impact. Shirley, you might want to mention some more about this.
No.
When we get to debt later or now?
Either way, Tara, do you want to hold on this one for debt or speak on this one?
No, why don't you go ahead and do this one right now, as long as we're on it.
So we looked at the rec impact fees. Actually, Matt played a key role in helping us look at the impact fees. And there is an allocation about how we can use rec impact fees for towards park improvements. And then we can use part of them for, I'll say, paths. So this was the bond that we issued back in 2006, build paths. So we are using some of the rec impact fees towards the payment of the debt or the paths. So that was our justification. So we did increase this some to help offset the cost in the overall budget to bring the expenses down a little bit for FY22.
Good.
And,
Okay.
You'll see when we get to debt, we have some new debt coming online. So this kind of smooths that impact a little bit by using a source of revenue at our disposal for that's appropriate.
Yeah. Shirley, just a quick question. Do you know how much is left in that bonded amount?
In the sidewalk one, 100, don't take my word for it, 132, 124, something like that, yeah.
Okay, pretty close to the amount that's we have allocated here.
Yeah. So
Okay.
So and we've been using that with grants for matching funds.
Okay, yep.
All right, we can move on to the next.
So I think we're over to, well, we have the new sidewalk plow, but there's no allocation for that in
No, there's no money. There's no money in that one. That's one we've had and we keep moving out. But once again, it's just to keep the sheet in there.
Then we've got the equipment fund.
Okay, so here's the big ones that we actually do have in. So the first one is large highway truck rotational, is just exactly what it says. It's replacement of our larger trucks in our fleet that are used for snow plowing. We have the same amount every year to keep that fund built up. And the current capital savings seems quite large, but it's not too many more years. We're going to buy 2 in 1 year. And that's why we are keeping that fund up there so we don't have a huge bump when that time comes.
And we currently have 8 of these trucks?
We do.
Okay.
And with any luck, maybe after tomorrow, we'll actually have 8 people. For the first time in, we've had that 8th position for a long time. It will be the first time it's been filled probably in 2 years.
Yeah. Well, good luck with it.
Well,
actually, that's another thing. Since in that 3 to 5 year projection, if I could just real quick go backwards, one of the big issues that I've got to plug for Public Works is, and Eric knows this, and Shirley knows it. I've talked with Eric about it before already. But one of the things we really need to do is increase salaries for Public Works employees. We're asking these people to live within 25 miles of Williston, and our starting salary is less than $40,000 a year. $18 an hour doesn't get you a whole lot anymore, especially when we're competing with towns and other municipalities in Chittenden County that are paying 20, 21, and 22 to get started. So once again, that was just part of the 3 to 5 year thing.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention it, but I wanted to make sure that I brought that up.
Yeah, and Bruce and I have spoken about that, and that's certainly, as we look at all salary schedules in comparison with VLCT does an annual report, so certainly something we'll keep looking at and updating the board on in terms of making sure we have a competitive market here.
Okay, sorry about that. Going backwards there a little bit, but anyway, that's the. If there's no questions, the next one's large highway equipment replacement. And that is just what it says. It lists our equipment there for replacement. And we're asking for $30,000. And the managers approved that for us. And what we do is just look at what we have coming up in the next couple of years, even though that list goes out much farther than the next 5 years. And so that we don't get flat there and, have a year where we really have to pump a bunch of money again. So that is what that one's about. Highway pickup replacement, just what it, just what it says. The 1 ton in 2021 we haven't replaced yet. We're still, looking at that a little bit and see what we really want to do. So the other ones are just what they are. In 2022, we're supposed to replace the, actually that's the truck that sits outside my office most of the time that we used to do the parking lots and the rec paths and stuff with.
So why is this fiscal year, significantly higher than the remaining fiscal years?
Because of just what I just said, I try not to do, Jeff, is somewhere I didn't look at the numbers right or something, and that, so I needed to jump that up a little bit in this coming year to do the replacement that's fitting into the schedule.
Okay, let me ask the question differently then, now that I get that, sorry. In 2023 onward, are we going to be putting enough in annually to cover the needs?
Hopefully, that's, hopefully I've done the numbers right and don't have to come back and be embarrassed again and ask for it.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
On to the next.
Grounds mower, just what it is. couple years before we have to do one of those. So this is just putting money aside. So when we go to do that, we can have the funds available.
Okay.
And the next one is not being funded.
About 5,000 in, Bruce.
Oh, you did? Okay. That's, oh, I'm sorry, that's on this one. Yeah, that was the next one I was thinking about. Okay, yeah, so this is one where we actually looked at it as well. And, you know, once again, trying to keep in mind the year that we're going into, what might be. So this is just to keep some money in there so we can keep doing the changes that have been suggested to keep our intersections up to snuff.
Any questions on that one? I think there's one more that is not recommended to be funded. That's the winter parking ban system.
Yeah, that one is just what it says. I'll just talk about it real quick. We know we see these in a lot of other towns now and municipalities. It's, you know, the light system that you can turn on to keep people from parking on the roads at night. Excuse me. So just something that I thought we should be thinking about.
Yeah, as we develop our downtown area, it makes sense.
Any further questions? I think that covers the capital budget for buildings and highway. So thank you, Bruce. Then we'll go on to.
Thank you all for your support.
Yeah. Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Take care. Have a good night.
You too.
We'll move on to finance and treasurer.
Terry, we've got a few folks joining us from the town band, where you might consider having, looking at the outside services.
Yes.
They want a chance to speak to their request here, so I don't have to stay on too late.
Yeah, that would be good. So we have the town band and let me find my, I got the
This
wrong
will
one.
be in the outside services budget now, and we've got the president, Kathy Shaw, and I'll get her connected up. Kathy, I'll get you connected right now.
Good. We do have a letter from her as well.
Yep, I'll get that one on the screen. And Kathy, once you get connected, you just have to, there you are.
This is my husband too. My husband is Bob, and he's the equipment manager and librarian.
Welcome, Kathy. We got your letter, so why don't you just go over your budget proposal for us?
Sure. So our budget hasn't really expanded at all since our last year. So it's we started out with a budget that was fairly similar to what it's been the last few years. But in light of all the COVID restrictions, obviously it's been a very sad year for the band. So when we looked at the rest of our budget for 2021, we were able to cut out about $900 of this year's budget because we didn't perform and therefore didn't need to pay our equipment manager and directors their honorarium. So going into next year's budget, we tried to think about what that would mean for the town, and understanding that everybody's strapped for cash. We tried to cut out as much as we possibly could without impacting our program. And since we didn't perform this year, what's in our budget that we took out were the band shirts and the band hats and any new equipment, because we were able to purchase that with last year's budget that we didn't use this year because we didn't perform. So we basically cut out about 9.2% of our normal budget, knowing we'll need to put that back in next year, but we figured we could do without it and hope for the best that we get to play this year. And So the budget we have right now is basically expecting a full performance schedule. However, we also understand if COVID limits that, we're willing to give money back again next year. But hopefully that won't happen, right? They're saying April, so we're hoping our season will be intact. Yeah.
We hope so too.
Yeah, it's been a tough year without any music.
Yeah. Any questions for Kathy regarding the report? Thank you very much for all you folks do.
You're right.
Yeah, we'd especially like to thank the board as well, because this means an awful lot to us, and we really appreciate your support throughout the years.
Thanks again. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Kathy.
Kathy.
Kirk, was there somebody else that wanted to be on right now?
Nope, just Kathy. I knew we had a couple other folks from the board on the town band joining, but I think they were just joining along. So
good. So we can go back to finance and treasurer.
I'll get that up on the screen for you, Shirley, here.
Thank you. So while Eric's scrolling away, the Board of Listers, there are no significant changes to that budget. So nothing, unless you have a question, there is really nothing much there to talk about. The office equipment, probably the biggest thing is the office equipment, but we don't have any computer upgrades for this year. So that's why that is blank.
Okay.
So this goes back to Jeff's earlier question, where is the treasurer? So we combined, as you can see, the what was called cash receipts and management right into finance, because we really work together, and we're not splitting hairs about time. How much time is the treasurer doing the cash receipting versus how much time is she able to spend helping me do some of the finance work? And to do that allocation, I'm not sure what value added benefit it was. So we are now one group, which consists of Mary, who's the treasurer, Lynn, who does AP and payroll, and myself under finance and HR. So we didn't really increase the budget, even though it looks like we certainly did. So if you take the FY 2021 approved budget of the $65,077,770 plus the $172,990, that actually is only $239,000 rounded up. So wow, we have a $56,000 budget increase, but it's really not. So most of that came from, you heard Sarah say, from the clerk's budget, reallocating the dollars that were previously in the clerk, now sitting completely in finance. Some of it is reallocating some of the expenses for finance, which have always been just charged to the town manager. We didn't have several of these line items in the budget. So now we've truly made a budget that reflects all of finance charges. The same thing, if you look at training and conferences, previously that was all charged to the general manager. So even though there is a $56,000 increase in this budget, most of it is just reallocations from other departments. For example, building maintenance, that's probably one of the bigger ones. That was all sitting, building maintenance for the town hall. That was all previously sitting in the clerk and in the general manager. So we just split that out to a third. Bank fees, again, was a expense to the clerk's office supplies. So we broke that out as a separate line item. And, the only true real expense increase here is the audit fees. And that's based on the RFP that from Sullivan and Powers, which includes a fee if we need a single audit. So we only need a single audit if we receive more than 750,000 in federal funds. So
Yeah.
chances are that's probably not really going to happen, but it's in there just in case. So any questions about the finance budget?
Okay.
Any questions from board?
So Shirley, sorry, one quick one. I am on, because bank fees sort of took me a little bit I just didn't expect it. So I'm on that item and it talks about lockbox fees.
Yep.
We,
So we use a lockbox for our utility bills. So when those bills go out, Jeff, the little stub actually has lockbox for People's United Bank and Brattleboro. So they do receipt a lot of our checks through a lockbox process.
okay.
And then we get a file back and we load that file into the utility system to post those payments.
I assumed a lockbox was like something you rented at a bank building and you put things in. But
Like a safe deposit box? Yeah.
yes, but
No.
boy, was I wrong.
Yeah. So that
Okay.
the People's actually has been very generous. Of course, we do, keep a lot of money over there, but that's the only fee we pay to People's. All other bank fees they've waived. So, we've got a very good deal when it comes to People's and our fees.
Okay.
Any further
Okay,
questions?
good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Don't hear any. I don't think you have any capital expenses under that particular column.
I don't. So I am going to jump next to services, that tab.
Yes.
So although not big, and you heard Matt talking about it, but so our current health officer, Cindy Thurston, we did put a slight increase, gave her a raise because she certainly has worked a lot of time and probably that's not enough. But and we also put her, and she's actually paid through payroll. So that includes her payroll taxes. And that was a recommendation of the league because of the circumstances that she's out in, usually escorted by our police. They said for workman's comp purposes, better to have her on payroll. So so that includes a like $150 increase and then the payroll taxes associated with that. So there isn't really, I probably, a number that will change that we don't know yet is I'm down to transportation because nothing else is really significantly changed, but that's Green Mountain Transit. And these are still our estimates. Where sometime this month, we should see those numbers finalized. So when we get to January and we have our list of changes for you, there'll probably be something in there for Green Mountain Transit, which also includes the E&D service as well. That's all part of the same contract through them. And as Todd mentioned before, we have the community partnerships. And as we were working on Todd's budget, it's like he clearly does not manage these things. So that is the $1,800 for the Masonic Temple that we rent for the seniors programs, and the town band. And I typically work with them on any expense reimbursement. And then the Lake Iroquois Rec District, again, that usually comes to me or Bruce. And, as long as that's within the budget, I approve it and we make payment to them. So those things really kind of fall under finance more than Todd and Parks and Rec. So that's the rationale for moving those.
Okay.
Questions on any of those other expenses?
No, good. Thank you.
You are welcome. Okay, now I'm going to jump over. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to go in that within that same tab, there's the open space preservation. So I'll start this off by saying the The audit is a lot more work than last year. I'm still working on it. They're asked great questions. There'll probably be a long list of recommendations. So I'm excited and looking forward to that. But in that conversation came the tax stabilization. So, and that, to refresh your memory, so that is the additional, can I say discount that we give landowners in Williston. So we have in our tax rate, if you remember, we have a tax rate just for the tax stabilization for current use, land use. And what had been done for many, many years and is we've just been booking an expense to pay property taxes and booking booking revenue and this expense, and there's no need to do that. So our property tax revenue already includes that number, and there's no reason to show an expense for tax stabilization. It's not really an expense. It's just, I mean, I think the theory was show what we are, show the cost of tax stabilization. But when you do that, all you're doing is grossing up revenue and grossing and creating an expense. No need to. So basically that just came out of the budget. No need to do that anymore. So that's gone.
That was at the advice of our auditors.
Yep.
Okay. It's just interesting because it's been there for years.
Yep. Yep. I'm telling you, Jeff, I have learned so much from working with the auditors. Like I said, there's going to be a long management list, I'm sure, but we've had great conversations and I think provided education to Eric and I, primarily me, but I'm just ecstatic to have all the input they've provided so far.
Good. That also, that number shows up on our tax bills, if I remember correctly. It's a line item there that we are shown. Okay.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah. Eric, the page you're looking at right now, is that in our book?
It is.
Yes, it should be. I think this is the one we didn't have a specific tab for. Its home is in the outside services section at the end.
Okay.
Let me see if my memory.
Go into like the 5th page, Jeff, and it's right there.
It's the last page.
Services.
Yeah, that's true. There's only 2 pages there.
Hiding. Okay.
I must have missed it.
Yeah.
We'll get that resolved, Jeff.
Yeah. No. It's in my book. I got it now.
It is? Okay.
Yeah. As I said, it was hiding. Because once I go into the cost breakdown, I don't expect to see another summary type sheet, and so it's my fault. That's why I said it was hiding. Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm now going to jump over to the tab called Capital Expenses.
Okay.
Yes.
So, as you've heard a few times, we, in order to put this budget together and have expenses come in less than the prior year, part of that was taking a really hard look at our capital projects this year and say, what can we defer without increasing any maintenance cost or cost of a capital project later. That's why you are seeing, and I'm just going to talk about those first 2 lines because, you've heard a lot of the, or all the people who have presented enough about the detailed projects. I'm just going to talk about the 2 lines, capital projects operating budget and capital equipment operating budget. So, those are significantly decreased if you look at them from the prior year, just because we tried to manage the budget without increasing total expenses. So that is the effect of that. And then the host town funded fund, I'll say, Eric and I do a, I keep track of the balance and do a forecast of that. And so Eric and I really looked at that forecast and what we thought, we're estimating what FY22 host town fees will be as well. So we felt like that was a comfortable place that, that host town fund will have some balance remaining, but that, helps us if we have the rainy day situation. But we certainly feel comfortable with the number that we've budgeted for capital equipment out of the host town fund.
Okay.
So now I'm going to talk about debt services, but I'm not going to talk about the old stuff, just the new stuff coming on. So thank you, Eric. So instead of looking at that page we were just looking at, Eric has just flipped over to the capital budget.
On page 12 of the debt schedule.
So, and don't let me forget to come back to my forecast. My 3 to 5 year projection. I forgot that I was talking about finance, but I won't forget overall. So hold on, Eric. I've just got to get to that page in my book as well. Actually, I can just be here. So I'm really going to talk about FY22, but I wanted to point out one thing that's not FY22. If you look at, because I think it looks really odd, but if you look at like the sidewalks and paths, and if you look at the interest line, and if you go out to 2026, you'll see there's a credit there and say, how can we have a credit of interest? Because in some of these older bonds, they have savings allocation. So it's there through the years, but the interest expense is more than the savings allocation, which is a credit back to us for income earned. But in the last years of the bond, that savings allocation credit is more than the actual interest expense. So if you look at those first 3 bonds and you look at the interest amount, the last year is a negative amount for all of them. And it really is because of the way the bonds were put together and the savings allocation in there. So it's not wrong. It is right. It just looks unusual.
Yes, it does.
So now I'm going to go down to the section that's called authorized new debt. And we try to, just like we did last year, we separated these between what's existing now, what is authorized and been approved, and then what is proposed. So the authorized new debt is the fire engine. That application needs to go in pretty soon so that we can get into the February closing, and those fire trucks are expected to be here at the very end of March. The last I heard was early April. So we need to have funds in hand to pay for those fire trucks. And then the Muddy Brook Culvert is the first payment. So we'll participate in the bond bank for May to get funds in July of 2021, with construction starting in the summer of 2021. So we'll look at May closing, and then interest with principal starting a year after the project is finished.
Okay.
So November 2022 will be the first interest payment. And then for proposed new debt, we're looking at the fire department roof replacement, which Aaron will talk about next Tuesday night. But that's just, we're looking at a 5-year note for that, not bonding, but a note. And the plan is to reach out to one of the local banks that we do a lot of business with, because we tend to get better rates from them. But so that would be a 5-year note through a bank for that roof replacement for the fire department. And that is it, unless you have other questions.
Shirley, I might,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
Shirley, I might know the answer to this already, but especially with the bond bank, why is it that the interest is estimated versus we don't know what that is? And I'm assuming that's because they haven't set the interest rate yet because of whatever mechanism they use to determine what interest rate they need to charge. The T-bills are
So no, it's related to the fact that until that, so they put this bond together, and this bond is from, any municipality in the state when they put it together based on the needs. So then they put the bond together, and then it gets, I'm going to say floated, but they have different investors who take pieces of that bond. Until that happens, till they close the bond, they don't know what the rate is.
Okay.
So it will be based on market rates and what is happening at the time. So we just used our best estimate of like 3%, not necessarily looking at history. I want to say, what did I do for that? I think I went out and looked at long-term federal note rates and, used our best estimate. But in line with the last couple of bonds as well, and feeling like the rates, certainly the rates for February aren't going to go up very much, and probably neither are the rates for the May closing or July closing, just because they're not, with the COVID environment, the rates will come back up very slowly as they try to, the Federal Reserve tries to induce spending by keeping the rates lower. So.
Okay. And then under the authorized new debt, when there's a first payment in May 2021, which is part of fiscal year 2021, are we having to make a payment in fiscal year 2021? Or I thought I heard you say it wasn't until 2022, and I guess I don't understand.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's a little typo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good then.
Okay.
Any further questions on this chart? If not, then I think you still have something to do under general administration and a couple of things on the capital budget, and then your projections.
Yep, I can touch on the general administration, and there's not a whole lot of variance here, as the department head spoke to. We tried to maintain a level budget and find ways where we could kind of tighten up expenses.
Eric, do you want me to talk about my finance 3 to 5 year plan before you jump into the general manager?
Oh yes, Terry wants Shirley to wrap that up.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
Let's
Okay.
do that.
Sure.
Let me go to the other side. So Eric has already started looking at this, and maybe this will happen this year, but we definitely need budgeting software. Excel spreadsheets just are very cumbersome for everyone involved. So having some budgeting software that we can use across the entity will make the process much more efficient for all of us. So that is definitely high on that list. And the other thing that we've started talking about, and then it got so busy, we put it off, but some kind of online time reporting software as well, something that will speak to NEMRIC at the end of the day. But the difficulty with that is we have 3 very different payrolls for fire, police, and all other town employees. But the days of manual timesheets are long past, and we need to update that and again improve that process. So that is a project on the list. You don't see it in the capital budget because I haven't had a chance to look at it yet to see if it's even. Our capital budget limit is $10,000. Is that a $10,000 item? I doubt it. So it may just be an operating increase, but I haven't looked at it enough to even factor anything into this budget. But that certainly is a priority project. And my third thing, so be happy I only have 3 compared to Bruce's list of 8. But so my third and probably the highest priority for me personally is the town and Eric's assistant to the town manager. We will talk about this, but But the town is at the point of needing at least part-time HR professional. When I took this job, I said, I don't know HR, I know pieces of it, but it's definitely not, I'm not a professional. And as the town continues to grow, I was counting, so we have 66 full-time employees and a number of permanent part-time employees. And then we have seasonal employees, we have substitutes and students who work at the library year round. So, in the height of the summer, we have over 100 employees, and the issues for HR just keep getting more complex and more time consuming. And I honestly cannot do the HR job and the finance job and do a good job at either of them. I'm already facing that now. There's, no time to be proactive in anything. I'm reactive to everything, and it's just not a nice place to be in this role, or for the town that HR could definitely use more help, and someone who is a lot more knowledgeable than I am. I get by and I ask questions and I get done what needs to get done, but it is all sort of a reactive basis and nothing proactive. So that's my last wish list item. How's that?
And
Thank you.
Clearly, you're doing a very good job too. I know there's a lot on your plate, so don't sell yourself short here. You're doing a great job, and certainly for the board and for the public, are certainly evaluating that role. And I'll get into that in a moment with my general administration report.
Do you
And
think
thank
do you think an HR position would be a full-time or a part-time?
No, I think part-time.
Good. Any further questions for Shirley?
Shirley, yeah, the HR professional actually makes sense to me. I don't like the thought of the cost of it, but it makes sense to me. But getting to the software needs, software for finance, software for time reporting. Have you looked at all into the cost of that?
Have not yet. Actually, the police department was really pushing it, and Eric Shepard, who's just an IT geek, and he's heard me say that to him personally, so he wouldn't be offended by that. But he started looking at something, and as I said, it was like then so many things were coming down the pike. I just had to put the brakes on. So we have not looked at that. We have not looked at it. I didn't even ask him the cost of something that we were going to demo. So hopefully this spring we will come back to that and be able to look at and demo some software.
Yeah.
But there is so much back and forth on manual timesheets for Lynn, asking questions. I think it would, help our productivity if it were something that were automated, including workflow as well. So the employee does the timesheet, it goes to the supervisor for approval, and then that workflow comes through to Lynn. And again, we'd have integration with NEMRIC, so Lynn wouldn't be rekeying what is coming through that software, but it would be integrated with NEMRIC and automatically uploading. So that's the desire, Jeff.
Oh, okay. My worries were going to be unpleasantly surprised at the cost.
Yes. Yes.
And then what is NEMRIC again?
NEMRIC is our software of record. So the grand list, the tax bills and the general ledger, payroll, accounts payable, everything. It's New England municipal. Isn't that awful? I can't think of the word. The next, but they only have this one piece of software that's specifically written for municipalities.
I would add, Jeff, on the software piece. I'm actually going to look at some budget software and actually more of a demo and get an idea of a cost for it. The town of Essex colleague that works over there, she let me know what they're starting to use as a piece of software. They're just getting going with it and kind of going through the budget process and the preparation piece and just trying to think of more efficiencies and where staff time could be utilized with having an online platform system versus the manual system. Rick and I tried to explore these a couple of years ago, and there wasn't a lot in the market. But whenever I'm looking at a piece of software, I want to evaluate what is it going to do in terms of efficiency and operations to make the investment worthwhile? Because most of these are an annual subscription fee. So I'd want to understand and take a look internally with what that delta is going to be here before I'd recommend any changes in the budget.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
To add to that, I mean, there is one hurdle that's still in the way that is part of a project that Eric Shepard is working on, is that we don't have shared drives with the whole town. Like, I can't see anything for the fire department. So that is part of a project that Eric Shepard is working on. So we could eventually, the only way the budget software will work 100% is if all department heads can see it. And we need that shared folder system. And I'm not probably saying this well to do that, but so that's another hurdle that has to be crossed before we could roll this out 100%.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and there are some cloud-based solutions too, Shirley, where we can have help.
Yep.
We'll get into that in the future.
Anything else before we go on to finish up with Eric? Okay, Eric, for general administration.
Okay, yeah, as I mentioned, really not a lot of large variances to point out here with our general overhead. A lot of things are pretty standard. You'll see some numbers just reflect our insurance allocation. The building maintenance, we're splitting that between the three departments in the town hall with the finance and the clerk and the manager. The select board budget, pretty consistent with prior years. If certainly the select board has anything they would like to adjust in that budget. I think you see the professional services line from last year. That was the manager search process. That's why that's the only expense there for a few years. Select board consultant fee. Technology, I bumped down the applications just a little bit. I think there might be a way to achieve some savings there, but I'm also kind of looking at that line and evaluating these future software needs as well. But I see it as a way to save a little money in the short term as we think about the long term with what we have ahead of us here. And then for the town manager's budget, I'll start off maybe from the bottom here. Training and conferences, I've decreased that a little bit, just kind of across all departments. I've advised to look at those lines and think about travel and trying to find a balance with professional development there. The manager's staff salary. So that's the assistant manager, the assistant to the manager position. And since stepping into this role in early August, I haven't looked to fill that position yet, partially looking to find a way to save some additional salary dollars this budget year, but also I think it's an opportunity for me to look at that position moving forward and what role it best suits. I came from being in that role for just about 3 years and seeing the different pieces of the job that are there, but also trying to be mindful of my needs for staff in the manager's office. But the human resources piece is a component I've been talking to Shirley about too, and thinking of that role if that takes on additional human resources focused, and then it's finding that right person that has that human resources skill set, which can also complement some manager office policy analysis type work and maybe some communications as well. So I'd like to take a little time and just kind of evaluate the needs for that position. I think I would look to potentially fill that later this spring, and so it's kind of on a hold a little bit for FY21, but I've put it budgeted in full for 22. And there's a little bit more that position Sarah alluded to with we're looking at a potential shared part-time role between the clerk's, finance, and the manager's office, and it would be about between 2 or 4 hours a week in the manager's office to help with really some general administrative tasks I can pass on to that person to carry the ball on. So overall, to decrease in the manager's budget, primarily some salary variances, and the manager's salary is 3/4 is funded through the general fund and 1/4 is funded through the enterprise funds. So I'll just pause there if there's any questions.
Nope. Anything for Eric?
Hey, but I think I just found an $1,800 savings.
Oh,
I'm looking at the regular expenses for the select board, and we have 1,800 for the Masonic Hall.
Yeah, we doubled it. Okay.
But
Oh,
it's a
it's
tax
elsewhere
agreement,
too.
and I don't know what that is. I've never seen that before.
That's something else, Shirley. It's an agreement we have for, I'll have to pull it up, but I believe it's a separate item than the rental fee for the seniors. It's a,
Okay.
I'll check, I'll pull it up and talk to you more about it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it was in lieu of taxes that we were doing that.
Well, and that's what I was thinking, but we don't bill them in lieu of taxes, because I just got done doing the in lieu of tax calculations for this year, and that is not one of them. And looking historically, that's not, I'm looking on the revenue side for the in lieu of taxes, and there's nothing there for the Masonic. So Eric, let's look at that item a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the agreement, so we can.
Okay, good.
Tab on that page.
The only other thing I think for Eric was the town hall file server replacement, which is not being funded. So that was the only thing I think left on for you.
Oh, on the capital side. Yeah, that's just our standard allocation for replacement. You also see the building security measures project in there. That's not being funded in 22, but that's capital sheet.
Right. So any other questions for Eric on his part of the budget?
no.
If not, then we're up to the manager's report.
Harry, we're also prepared to speak on revenue this evening if you'd like to address that.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. That was on my list and I didn't see it. Go ahead.
We'll end it up with going through all the expense and revenue budgets here and just save the library and public safety for next week here for review.
Eric, when you pull that up, I'll start yakking.
Revenue.
A lot of them were actually already discussed within people's regular budgets. Like Sarah mentioned that she has no passport revenue. And Jeff, I did write that down as one of the items to go back and I think have Eric and Sarah and I talk about again, because even obviously that Sarah's decision, but it seems like even if it's by appointment, that service might come back. So the question is, do we want to continue to offer that service to residents of Williston? And we can't just, I talked to Sarah about that too and said, hey, can we just offer it to residents of Williston? And no, if you're a passport agent, you're a passport agent for whoever comes in. So I wrote that down for something maybe that we will have an adjustment, suggest an adjustment to that when we get to January, a list of adjustments. But if we do that, the offset, so Eric was just talking about that sort of part-time position that it's going back to the 20-hour-a-week position in the clerk's office. And we sort of split it because we have some of the time coming to finance. So essentially that person could do a lot of receipting and I can have Mary's time to help with more accounting, Eric's time for a list of tasks, and then clerk time. So if we looked at the passport, we'd have to relook at that position too, Eric, in terms of that allocation may look different than what we have in here right now. But so anyways, Sarah already mentioned that she doesn't have any passport revenue, but the recording legal documents has just taken a jump. And so has an increase of 75,000. The fire inspection revenue, we're showing nothing right now, but according to Eric, there's still so the state captures all that revenue right now, and we are trying to start a program. So I guess there's still discussions going on between the fire department and state to see if we can pick up any of that.
Yeah, we'll have a report for the board in the new year as I work with the fire chief on looking at this program.
Let's see. Other significant changes, I'm hopping over to the highway. That stormwater project revenue, that's really a charge to the stormwater fund. So the highway department does projects for the stormwater utility, I didn't mean fund, for the stormwater utility to mitigate the flow into especially the Allen Brook, but any stream. So they have project software. They keep track of their, by project, the employees' time and who worked on it. So that's just a charge to the stormwater utility, and the revenue was coming back to the highway. So it's really offsetting equipment use and labor in highway as well. So there are offsetting expenses to that.
And Shirley, can I ask the staff that we use to implement the stormwater utility are public works staff?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yep. And then interest earned on investments. That 36,000. That I still have that on my list to continue to look at. That may be high, believe it or not. But the cut is just because of COVID. Rates have gone through the floor, and we're not capturing much interest. But when time allows, on the list of things to do is to work with Mary and look at our current investment policy we have right now. Change that first, and then look at some alternative investments, because the only investments that the town's been using in many, many years is just CDs. Yes. And there are some other options out there. That means we'd also need to work with our local bank to provide some other options. But I think we have some money that's longer term that we could do something else with and make more money. So that's on the horizon, to look at our investment policy and see if we can capture some more interest income, not only in the general fund, but water, sewer, stormwater as well. And then I'm going to hop down to the education tax collection service fee. So, I'm going to just take an opportunity to say I'm so excited about our auditors. But Eric, scroll back up to the property tax revenue line. So I guess we don't have the budget there, but if you saw the budget, our property tax revenue was always over our budget. And you say, why is that? Well, okay, part of the reason is when you look at the calculation of the payments that we owe to the state of Vermont for the education tax and to the school district, the state of Vermont gives us or reduces the payment we owe to them for an administration fee. And that has been just wrapped up into property taxes. So the auditors pointed that out and said, you really should create a separate fee line, because that's really something different. It's not property tax revenue. It's a fee that you're receiving because we're doing the billing, we're doing the collections, and then we're doing the remitting of that education tax to the school district or to the state. So that revenue is really not new revenue. We're just putting it in the proper line. It's not property tax revenue, but it's an admin fee that we are collecting from a reduction in the fee that we pay to the state. So those were the big items I was going to point out, unless you have other questions.
Sorry, one quick one, Shirley. The host town fund capital, the 355,000.
Yeah.
Is that what we anticipate bringing in under the host town, or is that a portion of what we anticipate bringing in?
That is, give me a second, Jeff. I just.
Sorry.
Well, back to those auditors again. So, we get the host town fee. There's three sources of that revenue. So it's what Casella provides us for the tonnage. It's what we get a fee for the compost facility, and a fee for the MRF. So all of those go into, so Jeff, I'm going to go back to a conversation at the beginning of this meeting that when you look at the audited financial statements, towards the back of those, there are these special revenue funds, and we have special capital funds. So the host town fund is one of those special capital funds. But what the auditors are really saying is, and I talked to Eric about this today, that we may make some changes to this budget for FY22 with January, that those host town fees are really a source of operating revenue for the town. They're general fund revenue. We should actually bring them into the general fund. We should reflect them as general fund revenue. And then we do this, allocation or transfer to equipment, to capital projects using not necessarily the host town fee. We may relate it to the host town fees we collect, but really it's an allocation for capital. So that the host town fee should be part of the capital budget, and we should show it as a revenue line. So with that said, so Eric and I were talking, maybe we'll show that in the January budget as a change in the way that's reflected. But their point is 100% correct. In those host town agreements, it doesn't say they're to be used for capital. They are general revenue of the town. So with that said, give me a second, and I have to remember where I put my host town analysis.
Shirley, if I recall, we book around 322 to 325,000 in the receipts each year, and then we draw from this balance we have of unexpended host town dollars. So we've crafted this revenue stream with that anticipated receipts for the new fiscal year, and then drawing down that host town fund balance.
Right.
We feel comfortable in that recommendation in this budget.
Okay. Okay. Because the hard part here is it's so difficult to predict what the host town fee or host town fees are going to bring in.
Yeah.
A year and in 6 months.
You're breaking up, Jeff.
For a year. Who knows what's going to happen with solid waste? Yeah, sorry. My internet is bad. Sorry.
You're better right now.
It should, yeah. It's a variable fund. And so it's, all depending on how solid waste management happens in Vermont, which is is subject to various forces, including the economy. And,
Yes.
Any further questions on the revenue side?
Nope.
Terry, I had one quick slide I can pull up here. I know it's getting late, but I tried to quick breakdown here.
Good.
I'll share this instead here. So, kind of looking in our revenue overall, we're about 183,500 reduction in this revenue. You'll see broken out in your summary sheets. You have tax revenue, then all sources other than tax revenue. So for the all sources other than tax revenue, that's our projected reduction in 22. And we've mentioned some big chunks of that number, like the investment income that we project will decrease over around $70,000, just best guess at this point. So then this budget proposal also has an expense reduction of about $82,000. So you can think of that, the ceiling lowered, as I actually use that as a visual sometimes. So that remaining $101,500 in the budget proposal you see, that's being offset by looking at it as a potential means to raise additional property tax levy by a half cent to make that balance. So Jeff, you were alluding to this last week, just thinking about, okay, the expenses are reducing, but the revenue streams are changing. So this is how this budget had that accomplished. So this remind the select board, the policy tools moving ahead are the use of the fund balance, the revenue to be raised by taxes, and then budget expense adjustments that creates revenue offset to lower expenses. And I've talked with Shirley today about that fund balance update. Be prepared for the first board meeting in January to look at where the fund balance stands after the FY20 books are closed here as the audit progresses. But I mentioned that's kind of big picture with the revenue streams tonight.
Could you send us this
Sure.
PowerPoint
Yeah.
screen? Yeah,
Just the one
slide.
slide. I tried to boil it down the best I could today. So.
Yeah, no, that's helpful for us financial simpletons.
Yes, thank you.
A lot of moving parts in the budget here, as we all know.
So if we wanted to eliminate a 1/2 cent increase, we'd have to decrease the budget by 100,000 roughly.
Yeah.
If you just went the expense route, there could also be a blended route. I think it will really be informative for the fund balance piece. The use of fund balance in this budget was overall decreased a bit because we decreased the capital use, but you'll see in the revenue proposal, it's pretty conservative about using that fund balance. So depending where we end up with the audit and the information Shirley will provide you in the January 5th, the board may feel comfortable and staff may feel comfortable recommending more fund balance to be used. So that could be, you could blend that to decrease the tax increase. You could also, if we may learn more about local option taxes coming up as well too. That's overall decreased about $25,000. So to answer your question, Terry, I see those as kind of the policy tools and discussion for the board to have on any tax increase here moving ahead.
Yep.
Hey, Jeff, just to go back and answer a question for you, I found my host town spreadsheet. So just because you don't see these numbers, but I'll just tell you the FY19 actual was 340,000. The FY20 actual was 343,000. So we're using a very conservative 320,000 when I sort of roll this balance to know that we are not overspending that fund.
Okay. Which makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. And then
go ahead.
And any we don't allocate to the budget, but we bring in that's above the amount allocated to the budget, that just sits in that fund and is available for the next year. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Terry, that's all we have for budget discussions this evening.
Thank you. So we've done a great business tonight. Manager's report, I think, is probably short.
Yep, just a couple of quick items I wanted to just mention this evening. Personnel side, we had a retirement this past Friday. Don Tarangu in the water department. He was here over 10 years of service, and he graciously stayed on an extra few months this year with COVID, with staffing, which is really nice of him, and it really speaks to his dedication to the water department. I think the day before his last day, we had that water main break on Williston Road. So I was thinking about that Friday when I was thanking him for his service. And we've also hired a new police officer. I need to learn how to pronounce his last name properly, but Neil Mogurley, I think. Yeah. He's been hired. He's worked in Vermont before, and he's going to be coming back here from Key West was his last where he'll be joining us from. So he's here. He's quarantining, and we expect him to be sworn in on the 14th, and that will put our police department back at full force.
Wow.
So officers, we have a couple folks who are finishing up training and academy coming up. So that's proud to report that news this evening. And then I'll mention something I've worked on. I've hired a retired chief, Gary Taylor, to do some work for us to evaluate dispatch in town. You may recall our discussion on regional dispatch here about a month ago. I've tasked him with looking at our current dispatch systems and evaluating future options for dispatch, including regional dispatch, to prepare a report. And it looks like we can have this report prepared for January 5th for the select board to hear from Gary as he conducts it. The board had decided it wanted to discuss any potential capital allocation towards the CCPSA during this FY22 budget process. So the hope is that this report and analysis will help the board get some more information about potential options moving forward. And then you'll see in the sheet I included in your packet about potential budget changes. I didn't include that capital allocation in the budget proposal, but I have it as the first item for consideration, which would be an additional $36,000 for the FY22 budget. So that's a project we've got going right now.
And will his analysis include a financial analysis of the options?
Yeah, I've asked him to take a look at that along with technology, just kind of
Okay.
fully encompassing. And he comes with experience as a police and fire chief and a dispatch center supervisor and organizer, serving on the 911 board. So I'm interested to get his perspective here.
Okay, good. Good, very good.
And that's all I have for my report this evening.
Thank you. Any other business that we need to talk about tonight? Seeing no hands raised, we'll be adjourned until next week at 7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Right.
Good night.